House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's 60 Minutes interview on Sunday got a little tense when Leslie Stahl pressed the speaker on holding up COVID relief. Let's take a look.
You, yourself, are not known as a person who compromises.
No, I am. I compromise. We want to get the job done. I'm mischaracterized by the Republicans that way, but that's a tactic that they use. No, we know we want results for the American people.
What about the COVID relief package?
Yeah.
That was held up for 8 months?
No. But that was their obstruction. I understand this.
Well, wait.
Was there obstruction?
Yours too.
Was there obstruction?
No, yours too. Takes
no,
two
it wasn't
to,
obstruction.
You held out for 8 months.
No.
Okay, joining us to discuss Democratic strategist, owner of JC Strategies, Jennifer Holdsworth Karp, and Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute, Rachel Bovard. Two of our favorites. Great to see you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you.
Absolutely. Okay, Jennifer, let's start with you. I know we've had this conversation, but that was really the first time Pelosi has been pressed on that since that epic Wolf Blitzer interview a couple of months ago. And it does bear one of the things that she was confronted with is the loss of several seats in the House. Almost every single battleground district that was up for grabs did not go her way. Well, Crystal and I have said a long time, we think one of the big reasons is that voters were punishing the obstruction or perceived obstruction. What do you make of the interview, just the general combativeness of the tone, and what the lessons to be learned are?
I think it was a really great interview. And let's not forget that the main crux of that interview was about the horrors that happened last week. And I think that Nancy Pelosi is damned if she does, she's damned if she doesn't. If she had compromised with the Republicans, I think a number of folks on the left would have said, this is what centrists do, right? This is what this leadership does. They always buckle to the Republicans. She held strong because 1.8 trillion at the time, and they weren't even offering that at the time. We wanted 2.2 trillion. She wanted to stand strong for what the American people actually deserve. Obviously, at the end of the day, it wound up being $600, which was a load of, total BS in terms of what the American people deserve for having endured this pandemic over the last year. But I think that she was right to do what she did. I think that a lot of folks are tired of compromising with the Republicans because the Republicans are the obstructionists on that. And they have a moral objection to giving the American people money when they need it.
So Jen,
this is something that Nancy Pelosi is battling against.
I'm not going to defend the Republicans here, far from it. However, how can you argue it was the right thing when there was, look, maybe the Senate Republicans would have killed the $1.8 trillion. We really don't know. But the fact of the matter is she was the one who put the kibosh on that deal. And what we ended up with was a lot less than that deal. So it doesn't seem like the master negotiator played her hand very well here, not to mention the loss of the House seats, as Sagar mentioned.
It was a bad deal. I think that she was being held hostage. I think that we should have pushed much, much harder for what
But wasn't it a better deal than what we ended up with? Like, how was what we ended up with a good deal?
Less.
When it was a lot less money than what was in that original deal.
Yeah, all around, it was a terrible deal. I'm not saying we got a good deal about it. And I think we did lose House races because of it, in part. I'm not saying that it was the perfect decision, but I'm saying that you don't negotiate with terrorists. And as we can see right now, most Republicans on Capitol Hill right now, if not terrorists themselves, are siding with terrorists. So I think it was the right thing to do.
All right, Rachel, let's get you in here. Let's see what's good. I'm not sure you're going to agree with that characterization. But, I mean, generally, look at the interview, Rachel. I mean, $1.8 trillion was on the table, $1,200 stimulus checks for all. We ended up with $600. We ended up with less money for almost every single national program that was necessary here. This is not a master negotiator move. And, I mean, it just doesn't seem like she's taking any culpability for having such a razor-thin margin now in the House of Representatives.
The trick of being speaker, right, is part politics and actually part getting something done, which is the compromise part. And the people who do it well, you never see either side come out, right? It looks like a clean get. And Nancy Pelosi just didn't do that this time. This was a missed calculus, and she's got egg in her face. And it's very obvious from that interview that she doesn't want to talk about it. But I think the reality of the situation is that, look, Steve Mnuchin was wandering the Capitol over the summer looking for a dance floor on a looking for a dance partner on a $1.8 trillion deal. Like, they wanted to get this done. And I think there were Republicans that felt that too. Now, you can argue that Mitch McConnell was playing politics with this. I've said that many times with regard to the stimulus checks, and that's, I think, the real tragedy of this whole COVID relief cycle. is that it started actually, I think, pretty well, in March, when both sides came together on the biggest relief package Congress has ever passed. And it devolved into this just complete bickering, posturing, politicking. But at the end of the day, you have to answer for that. And, the trick of being a good leader is to be able to see past that and say, I can actually get something done. And at the end of the day, that has to be the most important thing that gets us reelected, not this partisan standoff, which is exactly what this turned into.
Yeah. The other thing that was funny about this to me was I saw it online because of the number of people who were mad at Leslie Stahl for asking the question, which was a similar dynamic with Wolf Blitzer. Like, there's this instinct to protect elected leaders rather than to want to ask them tough questions, even if, like you, Jen, you kind of side with Pelosi, but I'm sure you want to see her pressed. Where do you think that comes from? There's like this sort of like celebrity cult view of politicians now, where you think if they're on your team, you only want to see them getting flattered and praised in softball questions, rather than recognizing like these are people with a lot of power and they should be held accountable to the public for their decision making.
Yeah, and I think it happens in all factions. This is not something that's unique to one side or the other, or one persuasion or the other within the same party. I worked for a number of Congress people that tried to have a vote to remove Nancy Pelosi. We wanted to see generational change at the time. This year, I think we wanted to come together. It was a very difficult time in politics. But I think that there were real concerns that was asked of her, even inside the caucus. Now, some of that dirty laundry was not aired outside, but there were a number of people in the Democratic caucus that wanted her pushed on this. So I don't think any of them are faulting Leslie Stahl. Yes, of course, there's an online cult that will continue to do so. But I think that that she was asked some of the questions that the caucus was asking of her itself.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. All right, guys, stick with us. We're going to have more Rising right after this.